So a little update on the 62 Ford that I brought home from my uncle's place a few months ago. I haven't done anything with it yet, other than set the hood on it, obviously, and soak the door hinges in penetrating oil and lubricate those so that they work properly. They're still a little stiff, and to get more lube, spraying those hinges, but the doors will be probably coming off anyways when I start working the body on it when I get it in the shop. However, this showed up. I brought this home yesterday, and it was another little short bed Ford, a 1964, so it would have been the same body style as this. Probably would have had the same bed on it. Those 1960 beds were put on these for a few years to remedy that unibody problem that they were having. I've got the front bumper for that in the bed, an extra hood for the Chevy in the bed of this one because that one's full of junk. But the cab on this 64 was so rotted out, when he lifted it off the frame to cut it up, he didn't even pull the steering column. All that steering is still connected. The cab lifted right off of it. Buddy of mine longtime buddy of mine, that old hot rod buddy, used to come out, help me and another buddy put old square body Chevys together. Had this sitting up on the hill behind his house, buried in old Model T parts. He was going to build it into a rat rod, decided that he was getting too old and wasn't going to be doing nothing with it, and asked me if I wanted it. So I called him up, and he was asking if I wanted the engine and transmission. Being a short bed, I need that drive shaft there too. And then he gave me the tow bar with it because that was already mounted up. And that'll come in really handy, being a 64 and this tow bar set up the way it is. I can just pull it off of this and throw it right on the 62 and drag it into the shop like a trailer. That'll make it really nice if my PB blaster will work. But when he pulled the body off of this, it ran, and the motor's not stuck, and thankfully it's got everything that I need to put the inline six stuff back into, and these new bushings in there obviously, but kind of see that a little bit better now. But it's got everything I need to put the inline six stuff back into the 62. And the 62 would have had one of two inline sixes in it, but it's got the 4-speed like what the 62 would have had originally. But when my uncle was driving this, it had a GM V8 in it, and it was not done pretty. So I'm gonna have to remedy those welds, and then that right there is where that front motor mount will go. And then these solid lifter inline sixes, there's almost nothing to go wrong with them. I'll have to check the coil, which that wasn't connected very good at all. Good to know. That probably needs a new coil. It definitely needs new wires. I'll have to take the distributor apart and at least clean the points. And I'll have to trace some of the wiring, make sure it's all in the right spot. New hoses, obviously, I'll go through. I'll replace several, like the oil pan gasket and the valve cover gasket. Give this the best shot it's got at living life. New fuel pump. I might use this radiator for a test fire, but it's pretty rough. It's original to the 64 frame, but it's pretty rough, and they're not that expensive online. I've already got to buy a new gas tank for that because that one's gas tank's full of rust. And I just don't want to mess with it. I need to buy a new gas tank for that too. Again, just don't want to mess with it. I could clean it out. Don't want to, I'm lazy. And I'd love to get more of them white spoke wheels for it, because that's what it had the entire time my uncle was driving it. And it was his first car. But this came with 4 original wheels. So I'm torn. Do I want to find the hubcaps for these wheels? And because I'm going to be painting that the original blue and white two-tone that it was. But it's got the wrong rear end in it. It's a posi rear end. This one has the right rear end. But I don't know if I want to swap that back over. My uncle got that rear end that's in that Ford from a good friend of his when he was in high school. And he put it in. But this frame is good, so I don't know if I want to, because these are going to have to go on a stand either way so I can go through them. They've been exposed to the weather for a while. That engine's not stuck, but I want to do like the freeze plugs and the gaskets and stuff, and they're easier to do on a stand than they are in the truck. This transmission, it's got a couple issues. It's stuck in gear, but it should be good. It wants to roll. It just, the shifter's stuck, even if it's still got the clutch assembly put on, which is what that is, a mechanical clutch. And either the clutch is riding, as you can see it kind of just barely down there, you can see the whole clutch assembly moving. But even I messed with that yesterday while it was up on the hill before we threw it on his tow truck and dragged it back, and we're thinking water got into it. The carburetor will have to be rebuilt. It's stuck. That's an old Holly. You can kind of see it. Old 1 barrel for the inline 6. That'll go in there. We'll figure out why this is stuck in gear. Still has the gauge cluster, and this 64 had either 131,000 or 31,000 on it when it finally met its match. But I'll probably pop that off of there. I've got a buddy that does pinstriping. I'll take it to him, see if he wants to pinstripe it up for me and use it as like a wall hanger or a spare if something happens to that one's. But I'm kind of partial to that one's gauge cluster because it's all been done up by an old hot rodder from the 90s. And while this probably won't help nothing, it certainly won't hurt, because I'm probably going to end up having to take this trans apart anyways. Part of me is hoping it's just back pressured from the motor. Somehow, maybe, because it was sitting on a hill up on an incline. It was not sitting flat. And it had a bunch of old sheet metal sitting on it. It took us a couple hours of digging to unbury it. But I was messing with this yesterday, and it was trying to roll. But I'll probably end up having to take that apart anyways, but who cares? It's all part of the fun. And that tow bar will get a lot of use. Finally got the Volkswagen queued up for the shop. Try to get it in at the same time I get this in. But this I always thought was kind of a cool feature on the 62. I didn't know it until I went up to bring it home from my uncle's place, when he decided that he wasn't going to do anything with it. So there's It's obviously got the wear and tear being an old gauge cluster, and the lens is intact and everything, and it looks good for its age. Then you step over here, and this one, all full of cobwebs, was engraved. And so a lot of pinstriping. I'm going to have my buddy that I mentioned earlier do some pinstriping on this truck after I get the paint on. And we're going to try to inspire the pinstriping after what was done on this thing's gauge cluster. Because that's cool. It's an old throwback. But I love all the inline 6 badging that's on this. It's still got the horn button. Doesn't work, of course. That's the faded, but the original color on this one. And all those were put in with the V8 swap back in the day. It was swapped to an automatic, unfortunately. So I'll figure out what to do that, because I'm putting the 4 on the floor back in it. Thankfully, when they swapped it, they left the clutch mounting plate, or the clutch linkage in, so that'll be easy to figure out and hook back up with the other transmission. I have to chase some of this wiring, like that was the ignition, and it's no good. There's no key to it. That frame had the ignition and key, and I was going to pull it off when I dropped it where it's at and throw it in the cab of the 62 so that I could use it, because I'm partial to the OEM stuff. With that kind of stuff, I think they complement the dash really well. And of course it fell apart into 3 pieces as soon as I took it off. But this ignition's no good. It's useless to me, so it'll come out. The only reason it's still in there is so I can keep track of what wires what on this. So when I get the new ignition, thankfully they're not that expensive and they come with keys. Surprised at how intact the seat is. As far as I know, that's the original seat to it. But that tank's all busted out and full of rust. I'm just not gonna, you can see some of the rust in there, and I'm just not gonna mess with it. That's pretty bad, pretty gnarly. As far as I'm concerned, that tank's just DOA. So, but that's the update.